celebrating the power of possibility.
I'm John Tolsma, and I believe anything is possible.
This is Anything is Possible. Great stories about great people like John Tolsma, whose lives prove that anything is possible. John, welcome to the broadcast.
Great to be here.
First time I met you, you want to know what the first thing I thought was? I like you.
Oh, good. Good.
I mean, you have this likability about you, and I was like, man, this is a really interesting person. Where are you from?
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. Tell me about growing up in Houston and your family.
Yeah, I think it was a great place to grow up. I always say Houston was a place, I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, where I learned a lot about booms and busts. It's a place where the booms are big and the busts are bigger. And so my dad worked in an office furniture company. And so when the big oil companies would take floors and need desks and to furnish them, he would do that. And I would remember there would be some years where there were a lot of offices that needed to be furnished and a lot of years where there weren't. So it was a great place to be. I have a really close family. And one of the other things that I appreciated about growing up in Texas was it's an open, big space.
Right.
So when you do that, you kind of have an idea to look out and decide what you want to do and dream big. And so that's what I really enjoyed about that. I really appreciate my parents letting me do that.
So you come from a family where you were allowed to dream big. How did that take shape? How did they, pour lighter fluid on whatever your dreams were?
Yeah, I would always say my parents gave me the opportunity to ask why not, rather than why. And so that helped a ton. So anytime that I was interested in exploring something or going through a door, they would always push me into that. Not in a way that felt like I was being controlled, but they always would say, hey, why not try something? Why not look at what the possibility could be? And that was huge.
It's interesting that you should say that. There is a connective tissue that I see between all possibility people is that somewhere, someone in their life said, yes, right? Go ahead, try it, do it. And that is such a common thing. What were your early interests?
Yeah, I was interested always in business.
Why?
I just liked the numbers. I liked the strategy. I liked coming up with things. And so being able to see people who did that every day, that was really energizing for me to see what that looked like. So I was interested in that. It's interesting, my grandfather was a Presbyterian minister. And so I can remember every Sunday sitting in church and my grandmother would teach me how to take meticulous notes of everything that he said. And I would go home afterwards, and while they were making pot roast, I would go back and practice giving the sermons back. And it was interesting to me that I also learned then that I really loved the power of communicating and finding people who had ideas and people who were communicators and learning from them and studying what they were doing. And that was something, even in high school, that I was like, gosh, I really enjoy the opportunity to kind of spur people on to do things by using communication.
So, why not be a preacher? Why not be a pastor? Did you ever feel called to ministry?
I think you have to have a very specific calling to do congregational ministry. I feel called to ministry, but I feel called to do it in the marketplace and with people one-on-one. And I think it's important to stick to your calling.
Are there tapes of you redoing
No,
your grandfather's sermons? I think that would be fantastic.
No, there are.
So you were interested in business. Did you play sports as well? What did you do?
I played sports through high school. I always like to tell the story, though, that I worked in high school. I mean, I had a job. And my job in the late 80s, there was an entrepreneur named Rick Goldberg who started this concept called Center Stage. And he would put in stalls of malls, recording studios.
I remember this.
So we had a great Center Stage in Houston, and I would go out into the mall and solicit people to pay $9.95 to come into the recording studio and record their song.
I remember this.
And it'd be really great if I could get them to do 2 songs, because it was $14.99 and I got an extra $3 if I was able to do that.
Were you pretty good?
I loved it. I loved it. And just teaching people to have confidence, to go in there and be willing, because we would blare their song out into the mall. And so just learning how to relate to people and get them to do that was such a great learning experience for me.
We'll take a break here, but you're doing this stuff, you're having a good life, you're being encouraged to dream, big dreams, Texas-sized dreams, but then you end up at Duke University. And I want to figure out how a guy from Texas decides to go to Duke. You're watching Anything is Possible. My guest is John Tolsma.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
If there's one kind of common thread in my life, is I'm just so grateful for people who invested in me along every step of the way.
So you're out in Houston, Texas. That's big oil. Like you said, boom and bust. And that city is so spread out. That place is amazing. So why wouldn't you go to school in Texas?
My parents told me to go through open doors. And so they encouraged me when it was time to look to go to college, to be really broad in my search. And so my sweet mother took me up to the East Coast, and we started working our way down, and we were going to go all the way from New Jersey back to Texas. And we went in October, Halloran, and I'll remember that every place that we went in the deep Northeast was so cold. You couldn't even hardly go from building to building already. But when we got to North Carolina, the kids were outside. And I know that sounds strange, but that was a huge part of my decision. I said, okay, this is the furthest north that I will go to college. And so ended up going to Duke, and that was a great experience.
What did you study at Duke?
I studied public policy.
Why?
I studied public policy because it was a nice blend of political science, economics, business, history, and I couldn't make a decision on what I wanted to do. And so it was a nice way to do a lot of things at the same time.
What did you think you were going to do with it?
I wanted to be a lawyer when I was in college.
Which led you to, of all places, Harvard Law School.
That's right.
How'd you get into Harvard, and how'd that whole thing happen?
Just like everything else, it's about people who invest in you. There were some professors at Duke that really encouraged me to do it. And if there's one kind of common thread in my life, is I'm just so grateful for people who invested in me along every step of the way. And so there were a few professors who said, you really need to go for this. They encouraged me through the process. They encouraged me all the way into the moment where I decided to go. And that made a huge, huge difference.
So what was it like jumping into that whole world of Harvard Law? I watched Paper Chase.
Yeah.
Your brains are mush.
It's not like that, I'll tell you that. It was great. You know, Leanne and I were married when I was there, and that was one of the best things for me because it is intense. There's a lot of work, and it was so stimulating and challenging, but I loved coming back every night and having a wife that I could kind of wrestle through what I had been experiencing, kind of shift the focus of what was important to me while I was there. And I met really good friends there. I met really smart people there. But the best thing that happened is our marriage grew because we were both going through a period where we were just working really hard.
Are you, you're an achiever. You like that next level up and the next level up, because as I'm looking through your story, it would have been pretty good for me just do Harvard Law. You know, that's in a lot of places, that's a golden ticket, right? You're going to do all right no matter where you land. But then you turn around and go to Harvard Business School and get the MBA from Harvard. How did that happen?
It's same kind of thing. There was a professor that I knew from Duke that said, while you're up there, they were starting a program where they wanted some students who had not had traditional work experiences to be in the business school classroom. And so right after college, you know, I had worked for Lamar Alexander when he was running for president back in 1996. And so a professor came to me and said, hey, we think it'd be interesting to have a student who had done political work in the business school. Would you be interested in going to Harvard Business School? And I go, are you kidding me? Of course, I would want to do that. And so that was just another chance where somebody said, hey, here's a door. I know you'll take advantage of it. Please do.
So you finished the MBA at Harvard. What did you decide you were going to do with all of this?
So I was going to work for a consulting firm in Atlanta. It was 2000. It was the year of the first internet bubble. And my wife wanted to come back to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Dadgummit, we were living in Buckhead. We were in the skyscraper. We were.
And I'm so glad she did. I'm so glad she did. Because I had still been interested in education. I had still been interested in law and kind of what was going on with the regulatory environment. I was interested in media and business. And a person came into my life, and it was Dee Haslam. And
Wow.
She said, hey, we've got these television studios, we're producing programming. Should we think about ways that we could bring education to what we're doing? And so she gave me a great opportunity to come back to Knoxville and start a company where we started to really wrestle with how could we do executive education using media. And in 2000, that was a big challenge, right? Because it wasn't like the internet now where you could stream everything so easily. So we spent time figuring out a media model where we could take the best professors in the country, get their content in a box, and then be able to resell it to corporations.
So you end up launching a company called Knowledge Launch. What do you do?
So our business was originally driven around this fact that we wanted to get the best of content around management education, marketing, leadership, finance, and be able to distribute it to large numbers of people where we could scale it. One of the things that we realized as a part of that, though, was when we were only doing that, where we'd bring a professor in and capture them on TV, is they weren't in their natural environment. Professors are best when they teach to students. And so we shifted our business about 4 years later where we did a lot of live events. And we would bring professors in and we would have them teach to audiences for customized executive education programs. And then we would use that content and be able to scale it out and send it out. And so that's still the model today. Now, what's changed is we're not doing the big live events right now because we've just come through COVID. But we learned so much about how do we activate content, how do we take faculty members and make their content really come alive, that we've been able to use it in a different way in this virtual environment.
That's pretty amazing that you would roll it all up, all of these passions that you have. But I guess as I'm looking for the catalyst of possibility in your life, this is, I guess, what I'm landing on today, John, is that people who believe in possibility people, right? So a professor sees an aspirational young person and goes, hey, I see some potential and possibility there. You being a possibility person, that collision of possibility thinking meeting possibility people creates new possibilities. Because every step along your story, you've been saying, so this person opened a door. Do you think you have a responsibility to be a door opener when doors have been opened for you?
Absolutely. You know, Leanne and I ask the question often, what is our highest and best use? How would God use us in the highest and best use right now? And we're in a season of life where I think it is being someone who is a catalyst to our children and to their friends about making choices and being wise about opportunities that they can take advantage of right now. And that extends not just to our immediate family, right? It extends to the people that are around them. And so that is, we talked about calling earlier. That's kind of the calling that we're in right now. The other thing I'll tell you about it is when we think about opening these doors, right, and people pushing you through these doors, one of the other things that I've learned is it's so important to leave margin in your life so that when that one door is open, you don't have to pass by it because you've blocked out so many other alternatives.
Wow.
So So that's again a way that we think about how do you take advantage of chances that come your way that could just propel you in a different direction and sometimes a better direction.
Wow. John Tolsma is my guest. You're watching Anything is Possible. Man, I'm loving your story. What's the toughest thing you've had to break through?
The 2008-2009 financial crisis was really tough on our business. No one had any money to spend on corporate education, and so I had to spend a lot of time thinking about how do we reconfigure a team and reconfigure a business to be able to deliver against that. What I appreciate, though, is that the lessons that we learned in 08 and 09 were the foundation for how we were able to get through COVID.
What did you learn?
I learned that people want to make sure that when they have a chance to interact virtually as they learn, you can't just put an instructor in front of them and let them lecture on and on. You've got to have interactivity, you've got to have moments of collaboration, you've got to have ways for them to break out and do things differently. So we were building this playbook for how we were going to deliver our programs out of the necessity of 08 and 09. So what was so nice is in March of 2000, when the world started to shift, we took that playbook out, we dusted it off and said, hey, it needs a refresh. It's been 12 years, but those principles were able to be applied to today.
Isn't it amazing how God gives you this creative ability to repurpose pain and to extract value? And I know your faith is such a huge part. I don't mean this pejoratively, but when people get really smart, sometimes they believe the necessity of faith diminishes. What's refreshing about you is, like, you're a really smart guy, and you've got the degrees and all of that, but every time I've been around you, you track toward your faith. What's that about?
I think I've shared with you before, 1 Corinthians 13:12 talks about the fact that we see through the glass dimly now. And I really believe that. I believe that every opportunity that we're given is a chance to learn something new. We won't get it until we're face to face. We won't see clearly. But faith keeps me rooted in the fact that God has me on a journey. And as I go through each step of it, through my business, through my family, I can't imagine not having Him alongside me to be able to make decisions and find ways to see through that glass.
How do you hear God?
Oh, I hear Him in the Word, I hear Him in prayer, I hear Him through people. You just gotta have your antenna up. And that's one of the things that I think is really important is it's not limited to a 15-minute quiet time. It's always being able to say, hey, I'm looking at ways that you're moving in my life and take advantage of that.
What's your why?
My why is to lead people into a purposeful life. And I believe that that life is rooted with a relationship with God.
How does that play out? Because I find it interesting when I see my faith intersect with my work. I'm not trying to cram it in there at all. It's more like you don't see the Duracell batteries inside the piece of equipment. You don't see it, but it's in there and it helps everything. But I'm using the shaver, the whatever it is, I'm using it. The power inside of it is essential, but I don't see it. It just operates.
But so think about this, right? So I'll use your battery example. What's the alkaline? What's inside of it? The wiring, if you were to use that, right? There's a reason why you are the way you are, right? And as you start to explore that, I can't come up with any other answer than that God wired us that way. And so if we're going to really be able to fulfill our purpose, if we're really going to have joy in life, if we're going to have success in life, we've got to be tuned in to what that wiring is telling us. Well, the guy who architected it is the one that we need to be closest to.
That's a great point, and I think that's why there's so much possibility. As I've been doing the show all these years, I really have been reflecting on, is there an algorithm to possibility, right? And I cannot place a high enough value on the people in your life that ignite possibility, that, that feed possibility, and tell you you can, right? Because it's one thing to be able to achieve academically and financially and in a business, but the desire to achieve, that in and of itself is a great thing. And the desire to leverage it to do good, I'm so thankful for people like yourself that are wired that way. Do you know who wired you that way or how you got there?
Well, a lot of the people that we've talked about wired me that way. God wired me that way. But I'll tell you, if you want the formula, right, the one thing that I keep coming back to is I really believe that every day is the best day that I'm going to live. I really believe that. So when I talk to you about highest and best use and what season we're in, I'm so grateful that I've had these seasons of learning and these seasons of living, but I really believe that the next season is the best season. And so you can't wake up every day and say, hey, how do I plan for that? How do I surround myself with people who expect me to be able to live that way? When you think like that, I think that's the formula that allows you to just keep looking for those doors and keep looking for those opportunities that create opportunity.
There's a proverb that says, the anticipation of the righteous is gladness. Like what you expect, right? What you expect is what you expect, right? And so I'm glad you wake up with that expectancy, and I think you are a great example of possibility, and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been really
John
fun.
Tolsma, you got a new best buddy. It's gonna be hard to shake me off. So. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.